Hey folks, Brian again with my review on the Runequest role-playing in Glorantha Manuscript. Getting my notes caught up with my reading. This section is on rune cults. And it goes in quite a bit, a deep detail, and so there'll be a lot of my comments, or just reviewing, talking about what they're saying, that kind of thing, more than other stuff. But a cult in RQG is specifically used as a means of communication between mortals and the gods. Yeah, makes sense, but it's never really been spelt out that way, as I recall earlier. And the word cult means the care owed to the gods. I like that. And it talks about the worshippers and the hierarchy. Everybody involved in a cult. Well, obviously, the gods, the deities, they get power through people sacrificing power to them. And the more people sacrificing, the more power they have, the greater they are able to be, that kind of thing. And there's the hierarchy, which in both Runequest 2 and 3, they don't really talk much about, if at all, really. But the hierarchy themselves, they get magical power. They're sacrificing for rune spells, that kind of thing. So they get, they get their magical power. That's their benefit, what they get. But, on the side, they also get a pretty good living. And we'll talk about this later, about the rune lords and rune priests and that kind of thing, and their standard of living. The worshippers get whatever it is the hierarchy feels they are obligated to give the lay membership. Whether that's a lot or little depends primarily on the deity, I would believe, but could be more dependent upon the local hierarchy. So you can have a stingy temple of Glorantha in one area and a very prolific temple of Glorantha in another area. The worshippers. You've got your lay members, you've got your initiates, and you've got your rune masters. Whether they're the priests, god talkers, and this is new. God talkers, rune priests, rune lords, or the infamous rune lord priest. And they talk about the deities. You've got the greater gods, the older gods, Glorantha and his group. They don't say lesser gods, but I would throw lesser gods in there. Then you got things like tribal ancestors, wood nymphs, ancient chieftains. All of these people, all these creatures, all these entities can be considered deities and have temples, shrines, etc. associated with and dedicated to them. The gods generally ignore the ordinary worshippers, the lay membership, and then they give 3 reasons. The gods do not, or the lay membership does not officiate as sacrifices. The lay membership should be kept in order or in line by the hierarchy. In the lay membership, or the gods themselves actually, do not have the time, and I would say interest rather than time, to deal with everyone individually. Then they discuss the different classes of cults. You've got a major deity where you've got more than 500,000 worshippers. They have a large hierarchy. They have many temples. You have medium power deities, between 50 and 500,000 members, but usually no associated deities with them. They're just a single deity. And then you have minor deities. These are your sub-deities, powerful spirits. And then there are numerous cults to local heroes and spirits, that sort of thing. I note here that these are the powerful spirits that have not, or sub-deities even, that have not made that jump to godhood. This reminds me, if you watch, what's the Twitch guys? Critical Role. If you watch Critical Role, and I do, right now they're fighting Vecna, and there's this point in the play where Vecna's trying to reach godhood. He's this great, powerful spirit who has not quite yet made that jump to godhood. I thought it was interesting, tying things together, different systems of things. Fundamentals. The gods are real. That's the first thing I tell players when they sit down at the table. Runequest is different because the gods are real. They're involved in everything. But, however, they're not omnipotent and they're not omniscient. they are the embodiment of the runes that are associated with them. So their knowledge is limited to their own, their own capabilities, and they're limited by time. That great, what was it called? Compromise that established time, locked the gods behind it. Also, because of the Great Compromise, they've lost the ability to act independently and to create. That phase of existence is over. Okay, the relationship between cult members and the deities. We talked a little bit about that earlier, didn't we? But they covered here specifically. Worship, divination, and divine intervention. Worship is a skill, right? We talked about that. There's an individual skill, individual worship deity skill for each deity. But use the worship skill to sacrifice magic points on holy days. Lay membership are required to sacrifice 1 magic point. Initiates and rune masters are required to sacrifice 2 magic points. If you're officiating, though, and you sacrifice magic points, you can sacrifice more and you get a plus 10% on your worship skill for the actual worship ceremony for each extra magic point that you sacrifice. Then there are the secret rites, right? This is initiation, right? And the initiates. These secret rites are the reenactment of the roles of the deity. They also go on to the hero quest rituals, which are reenacted during the sacred time. These are the behind the curtain kind of stuff that goes on with initiates that the lay membership's not involved with. Okay, divination. What does a god know? Well, he knows everything, or he or she was involved with during the god time. He generally knows, and I'll use the male he just because Glorantha is he and he's the major guy, although there's the female version of Glorantha too. So curse me if you want, but that's what I'm saying. The deities know generally what has happened and perhaps what is happening to and with their rune masters and somewhat on their initiate side. And this is because these folks are praying. Your rune masters and your initiates are praying to the deity, telling them what's going on, asking for help, etc. Thanking them for blessings, that kind of deal. And so generally they know, what these guys are doing, what's involved in their life. They also generally know what's going on in the realm. So Glorantha, being an air god, storm god, knows generally kind of things that are happening in the air, that kind of stuff. For example, if there was a mass migration of, say, storm bulls flying across Dragon Pass, Glorantha would probably know that. Then there's divine intervention. Divine intervention does have limitations. Tied to the deity, right? You don't ask the sun god to cause a flood or an earthquake, that kind of thing, right? But some of the generic things that pretty much all deities can do is they can teleport their worshippers out of a situation. Generally, they can resurrect characters who have died. There's a limitation there too on time because, again, gods have no concept of time, so it's got to be fairly immediate. They can raise their worshippers' characteristics by 1. They're still limited to their species max. The procedure for divine intervention. Got a whole page of notes on this one. First thing you do is you have to permanently sacrifice a rune point, not point flower, a rune point. You have to permanently sacrifice a rune point. And then you have to, the character, the player, whoever, has to state precisely what it is they want to have happen. In the example they have, Vasana as a rune priest of Glorantha says, I simply want to be a conduit of Glorantha's power and kill this troll. And so a lightning bolt comes through her and out and does like 66 damage on the thing, blows it up. Okay. After you say what you want to have happen, it's time to roll. It is, well, not roll double L, roll a lead, but we're rolling dice. That's what we do in our game. We roll dice, right? So you roll a percentile. They don't say it here, but I'll make a mention here. Rune Lords only roll a d10, and we'll get to why later on. This percentile roll has to be less than your power plus the number of rune points that you have not yet expended. Not bad. If you're a priest and you've got a lot of rune points, that gives you a greater chance of being successful, right? And later on, we'll also talk about how initiates can actually get rune points too. Everybody remember one-use rune magic for power sacrifice? Pretty cool. Okay, so what happens? You lose the number of unspent rune points plus permanent power points that you rolled on that die. So if you're lucky enough to roll that odd one, you lose 1. But if you rolled exactly the number you have, your power goes to 0 and you die. I actually really like that. I think that's cool. Yep, the guy does what you want, but it takes your life. Okay. Power points, again, permanent sacrifice, so they're gone. But the rune points are recoverable. That's a nice little buffer to have. And that sacrifice happens after the intervention. So if you say, Orlanth, teleport us out of here, he takes you, the standard is up to 10 normal sized persons plus their standard equipment, back to the temple, and they're dead on the ground. Okay, the priest, if you are a priest and you request divine intervention and your power gets knocked down to below 18, which is you need to have a power of 18 to be a priest, you are no longer a priest until you get your power increased, and later on we'll talk about the status that that has. And again, if your power goes to 0, you are dead. But you have entered in the blessed realm of your deity. Okay, Rune Lords. Their intervention is always successful. And this is something I didn't really catch earlier, but as I'm rereading and making my notes from stuff I read earlier, it used to be that Rune Priests and Rune Lords were pretty much equal. Well, there's some differences, like with divine intervention. Yeah, there was still a percentile in D10 before. But in Runequest Glorantha, Rune Lords are much higher up in the deity's perspective than priests, which at first really surprised me, but I can almost buy off on it. But I did like this whole balance of magic versus martial, and it's not there at the rune level. The martial is well above the magic. Interesting. But like I said, they only lose. That's always successful when they request it. And like I said, they roll a d10. And just like priests, if they have unspent rune points, that comes off first. And again, they're rechargeable. And then a rune lord doesn't need to maintain a certain power level. So if his power goes down to 10, it goes down to 10. Also, a rune lord can request a divine intervention immediately after death. So the rune lord gets killed. He asks for divine intervention. Get my party out of there. Automatically successful. Man, these guys are powerful. Okay, cult spirits. Every cult has cult spirits. Obviously, the larger the cult, the more volume spirits they have, and the more types of spirits that they have. But it's not just spirits. They're spirits and entities. The most common type of cult spirit, they still call them spirits, are elementals. And in the quick start that we played, if not all the parties, but most parties, grasped on this whole idea of grabbing an elemental and having him doing something. And then there's a table of all the basic deities and how large of an elemental they can have. Small, medium, and large. But not everybody can create a large elemental. And I think it has to do with the deity's power. And here's something else that was not mentioned in the quick start rules. To command your elemental, you need to use your command cult spirit skill or spell. Command cult spirit is a spell. You have to cast that spell to control the cult spirit, which in general makes sense. And I would apply it to normal spirits, but in this quick start, I didn't talk about elementals being cult spirits. Although now that I've read all this stuff, it's almost implied in the quick start rules, or maybe I missed something. But yeah, I can definitely see that. So once it's summoned, you cast Command Cult Spirit, and then you've got control. So, oh, that wasn't quite so long. 4 cards, 15 minutes. Not bad. But I've got 2 more stacks of cards. So I still got some time. I'll get at least one more out. Ciao.